All right, folks, we shall just get going. A couple of minutes away from beginning. While we wait for other people to join us, just some rules of engagement. Please do keep yourself on mute. We will have plenty of opportunities to engage during the session. We'll be dropping you into some chat box, and we'll be going into breakout rooms as well. So plenty of things will be happening. I'll keep you posted. But do please keep yourself on mute, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for your participation and engagement. We'll get going in maybe a couple of minutes. Thank you. Very well then, let us begin our conversation today on this critical topic of change management. For those of you who are joining us for our second webinar, you'll realize that this is a series of conversations that we're having with leaders and managers and people all over the world, having conversations around what do we do? Well, the good news or the bad news is nobody knows what to do. So if anybody tells you that they have a solution of how to get us out of this, they're lying, right? We're trying to figure this out together. We're trying to listen and learn and grow together. The way we run these virtual instructor-led trainings, as they're called, not webinars, VILTs. The reason I say that is because I will be counting on you for your participation and engagement in the chat box as we have these conversations. We're going to have people from all over the world joining us. We'll have opportunities to share and learn from each other. Just as we get going, may I just request you, if you can, if you have your chat box open, would you mind putting into the chat box what industries do we have with us today? I see some people from banking and from hospitality. Love to hear from you. If you want to just go ahead in the chat box, please. If you just write, what industries do we have? Fantastic. We've got branding, of course, Hassan, a well-known name. Dr. Bashar is on the call with us as well. Dr. Bashar, would love to hear from you later on as well about what you're seeing in your world. We've got communications and oil and gas, well-being. We'll definitely love to hear from you as well. Of course, Dave Crane, a big name in the world of well-being. We've got consulting and hospitality and consultancy, outsourcing services, consumer technology, customer technology. Fantastic. So healthy discussion hopefully we'll have today. I'd love to hear from you guys as well, and we'll have plenty of opportunities. At one point, I will be dropping you into smaller breakout rooms. As we do that, there'll be about 5 to 6 people per room, and that'll be an opportunity for you for a few minutes to be able to chat and talk in a smaller setting as to what you're seeing and what you're observing in your organizations. Well, what a couple of weeks we've had, right? What a couple of weeks we've had. Over the past 2 weeks, our life as we know it has changed. Many things we took for granted. Now we realize, what the importance of just being able to come to work and have a normal work day. The things we used to complain about before, nobody's complaining about them now. The way we're going to set up this conversation, and just as we get going, some rules of engagement for this. Of course, these VILTs, webinars, are opportunities for us to learn from each other. And what I'm hoping is in these conversations, if there's one thing or 2 things that you want to take away, please do take notes as well. I will be emailing you the presentation after this call. And for sure, if there's any questions and comments, we'll have the last few minutes available for comments and questions as well. So there's kind of 2 ways we're going to handle this. We're going to talk about kind of the human response to change, right? And how we deal with change. We'll do that for the first few minutes. And then the bulk of our call today will be around change management. Any guests, just to get you going a little bit, these change initiatives, right? So I'm sure many organizations that you guys are working with, maybe you are working yourself on change initiatives, you go through different change programs. Now, just as a check, what % of change initiatives or change programs, what % of them fail? Any idea? Love to hear from you in the chat box. What % of change initiatives globally the companies run, what % of these change initiatives fail and why? What percent of these change initiatives, right? Companies kind of cost cutting, retrenching, acquisitions, mergers, and why do they fail? Love to hear from you. 80%, big number. Love to hear from you. Salam Al-Kindi as well with us, a professional in the aviation industry as well. Arsalan saying 60%. Love to hear from you. What percent of these change initiatives around the world the companies run, what percent fail and why do they fail? Afzal says humans not accepting change and mergers and acquisitions. Teams don't believe in the change. People are not taken along on the journey. Well, as we see some answers come in communication, a big reason as well. Well, one of the things we observe around the world, the number is about 80%, right? 80% of global mergers and acquisitions, global change initiatives fail. Now, by fail, it doesn't mean that companies go bankrupt. By fail, it means that they fail to live up to the desired outcome of the change initiative. And some of the reasons why that happens is because any management consultant like us will tell you, like, there are 3 P's, right? So there's the process, the product, and the people side. So companies will spend millions of dollars aligning processes. They'll spend millions of dollars aligning product. But unfortunately, nobody spends time on the people, the culture. Nobody spends time explaining why the change is happening. And a critical conversation, which we'll have in a few minutes, is what life will look like after the change. What will success look like for us? Because if you do not know what success looks like, one day you will be successful and not know it, right? Because if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there. Love to see how many people we've got joining in from different countries, from different industries. We'll be sharing your experience, hopefully, in a little bit as well. Every week on Thursdays, 11 a.m. GST, it's Dubai time, we'll be having these forums and discussions with people from all over the world. Let's talk a little bit about human reaction to change, right? So we've got that typical flight or fight response. Let's say, just for some fun, if wherever you're sitting right now, I'm assuming many of you sitting in your homes, can't really go out in most of the world. Let's say if the door was to open right now and a tiger was to walk in, right? So what would be your response, right? Right? You'd either run from the tiger or fight the tiger. Nobody would analyze the tiger, right? Nobody would say, well, is it a good tiger or a bad tiger? How many lions does the tiger have? Right? We just either run or fight. These days we don't have tigers, but we've got bosses and managers and deadlines and projects. So the same kind of response that we have to flight or fight, same thing kicks on the moment we realize a change is coming to us, right? The reality is that, from a biological background, for those of you who've been on the calls before, my background is in child psychology. That's where we've spent the past 12, 13 years training over 35,000 people all over the world, understanding why people respond the way they do. So I'm definitely not counting the tiger's teeth, that's for sure. If you've noticed when you've got stress or anxiety, do you ever notice why you get the butterflies in your stomach and your palms become sweaty? Do you ever notice that? Right? Why does that happen? The kind of nervous anxiety, the butterflies in the stomach and the palms become sweaty. Well, that's the human kind of the reaction to flight or fight. Because we're trained in that, the brain says, send all the blood to the bigger muscles, the arms and to the legs. We're either going to fight or we're going to run. The feeling of the blood leaving your stomach and going to your arms and to your legs is the butterflies in your stomach. And because there's more blood in your hands, your palms sweat to reduce the temperature. Why am I telling you this? Because just like the blood leaves the stomach, guess which other area of the body the blood leaves? The brain. So under high levels of stress and anxiety, your ability to make decisions and to think practically, to think rationally is inhibited, is reduced. So what we're getting around the world these days, and I'd love to hear from you if you're seeing the same in your organizations, is not fight or flight. It's actually freezing. It's nothing. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had numerous conversations with some of the clients we've been working with, and you almost get the feeling that The past couple of weeks have been, well, it'll go away. There's a fantastic article that I read the other day which talks about a normalcy bias. That many of us have a normalcy bias, so we think things will return to normal, and this is just a slight deviation. Well, what if this is our new normal? What if things we considered normal, that we don't go back to that? May I ask you in the chat box quickly, we've got people from all over the world, different industries. Love to hear from you in the chat box. What over the past 2 or 3 weeks has your organization been doing? Don't worry, we won't ask you which organization, but what have you guys been doing? Have you been fighting? Have you been running? Have you been, is it a deer in headlights moment? Is it a wait and see strategy? What have you guys been doing all over the world? What has kept you busy? And have you been dealing with the today, or have you already started planning for the future? Usman says we're looking for opportunities all over the world. Arshad says the same. We've got Pavleen saying we're proactive planning. Pavleen, interesting to talk about proactive planning, right? What will the future look like? Your guess and my guess as good as anybody else's. Exploring business opportunities in this dynamic, planning for the future. One of the things I wanted to emphasize to you, fantastic research done at Stanford University about a year and a half ago. They put these set of students, right, and similar backgrounds, similar grades, and they divided these set of students into 2 groups. And in one of the groups, they gave them, well, both of the groups, they gave them a maze. You know that maze that, you have to take the mouse out of the maze? But this one was an actual physical maze. So you had to open doors and the mouse would run there. You'd open that door, then the mouse would run out and so on. And they'd kind of given 2 separate rooms, 2 groups, the same task. They got them to repeat these tasks a few times, and they found that on average, their ability to take the mouse out of the maze was about the same. Then what they did is in one maze, they put pieces of cheese in different parts of the maze. And as the mouse would get to the cheese, that there'd be confetti and music and celebration. So they'd be celebrated for taking the mouse out of the maze and getting bonus points with the cheese. In the other maze, they put a cat in the maze. When mouse hit cats, what happens. So when mice, exposed to cats, not a good idea. In essence, celebration of success and fear of failure. And they got both groups to repeat this exercise a few times. And here's what they found out. In the short term, the results were similar. So whether right now your employees and staff are driven by the fear of failure or the celebration of success, their results were about the same. But very important, after doing this a few times, after living in the fear of change, they gave each group a highly strategic task to do, a highly creative and innovative or strategic task to do. And what they found out was that those individuals who were exposed to fear of change and stress and anxiety, and they were kind of worried with the fear of failure, their ability to do interactive, their ability to do strategic, innovative tasks was greatly reduced. So the point I want to make is, as a leader, as a manager of people, please keep an acute eye on what are your people driven by right now. Are they driven by opportunity, as you were saying in the chat box, or are they driven by the fear of failure? Are they driven by uncertainty? Because if they go through that for an extended period of time, their ability to think creatively, innovatively, and strategically after that will be deeply inhibited as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about the options we have, right? So that typical kind of fear zone, learning zone, and growth zone. In the last conversation we had last week, we asked our participants to ask how many fears was a human baby born with. We do have some people on the call from last time, but just for some fun, just to ask you guys, how many fears is a human child born with? Please do keep yourself on mute. Some people, kind of we can hear some static, so please do keep yourself on mute. Ryan says 3, of course. Some people saying 2 and 3, 4, no fears. For those of you on the call last time, you know the answer to this, so no cheating. Look, our research shows that a human baby is typically born with three fears, right? We're born with the fear of loud noise, we're born with the fear of drowning, and we're born with the fear of heights, falling and so on. Every other fear we have learned. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of public speaking, which, by the way, I read the other day ranks higher than the fear of burning to death for some people, right? Every other fear we have learned. The good news is because we learned it, we can unlearn it. So here we are right now, 2-3 weeks into this change. Companies, unfortunately, laying off people, or at least talking about that. Cost cutting seems to be the flavor of the month. So you got this fear zone right now. And then beyond this, in a few weeks, we'll start accepting our new normal. So we'll go, hopefully, back to our comfort zone and then kind of start accepting this as the new normal. And then on the other side, we'll come out and hopefully have growth opportunities as well. The point I'd like to make is, it is your ability to deal with change. It's not the change itself. So those are the typical fears, right? The kind of falling and loud noise and drowning and so on. Every other fear we learned, and because we learned it, we can unlearn it. Keep an acute eye on your people right now. Are they operating in their fear zone? There's no growth that happens in the fear zone. Are they in the next few weeks going to come to the comfort zone, right? Where everything starts to come back to a normal, or are we going to push them to the growth zone? I'd like to ask a very important question to some of the people we have on our call today. And as we have these calls every day, we have conversations about what your organizations are doing and what are you dealing with right now. Every individual, every leader, every manager goes through a typical change cycle, right? I know we've had, conversations on this before, but I'd like you, for a moment, before we get into your organization, your team, just reflect for a few minutes. Kind of, where do you find yourself today? We're going to be breaking you out into breakout rooms in about 8 to 10 minutes or so. But before we do that, may I just ask everyone to keep themselves on mute? Just have a reflection on this. Let's have a look at this. The typical stages of change, right? The first one being loss. How is my life going to change, right? You've got that typical fear. Am I going to lose my job? What if I just keep doing what I'm doing? Tony Robbins says, if you work the same way for 10 years, you haven't worked 10 years, you worked your first year 10 times, right? Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So as I talk through this, kind of reflect, which stage do you find yourself in today? Is it a stage of fear and apprehension and anxiety? Or have you moved on to the next stage, which is just resentment and anger and hurt? Why did this have to happen now? Why does this always happen to me, right? So business owners, I'm sure we've got some business owners on the call today, small business owners going through this. Why did this have to happen now, right? That resentment and kind of where we are today. And then maybe it gets on to this idea of discomfort, which is a resistance to change. For those of you who are business managers and leaders, I cannot stress enough to keep an acute eye on yourself and your people. Which stage are you on? Sometimes you'll have employees and staff that have such resistance to change that in the discomfort stage, they will sabotage the change just so they can prove, see, I told you so. See, I told you it doesn't work. Beyond that danger zone, the kind of bottom of the curve, you get to move on to discovery, where people start trying and applying a few things and they start playing with a few ideas and seeing how creativity and innovation applies. Then they get to understanding of, oh, well, that's actually working for me. I can actually work better like this. And they get to that integration where they start taking the, what they've learned and what they've experienced and start putting it into their day-to-day work. May I ask you, please, in the chat box, love to hear from you, just a reflection of where do you find yourself as a leader, as a manager today? Love to hear from you. Which stage do you find yourself in today? Because you cannot give to others what you do not have yourself. As a leader and a manager, all eyes on you, right? So where do you find yourself today? Are you at that lost stage, right? Where, somebody comes and says, well, boss, I'm worried about my job. And you say, well, I'm worried about mine. Where do you find yourself today? You find yourself in doubt. Don't know what things are going to look like, resentment and anger and hurt. Or is it resistance to change, where all the effort is resistance to change? Sharon on the call talking about discomfort. Some people saying, well, I'm just kind of figuring in a 4 to 5. So some people already gone through that curve. We've got some stages 3 and 4, and people saying, I'm trying to understand how to move forward and what it'll look like. Well, the consensus seems to be many of the people on the call today kind of already moved on from that danger zone. Well, this would be interesting for you to keep in realize where you are and where your people are. Because if the critical thing is how quickly we move through these stages, right? The acceptance that people will go through these stages. So you will have some employees and staff that will resist change. In fact, they'll sometimes sabotage the change process just because they can prove it doesn't work. Remember the last guy who tried to do this? Remember I told you so? That kind of stuff. But how quickly you get around the change horn, how quickly you move to the stages will define how successful we'll be and how proactively we come out of this on the other side. Well, our conversation till now has focused on you and yourself and personal change and dealing with change. I'd like to move on now to the second part of our conversation, which is about change and organizational change and how organizations deal with change, that Kotter change model. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to kind of go into smaller groups and smaller breakout rooms. I'll need your support with this a little bit because technology, sometimes doesn't play along with us. What we're going to do here is we're going to divide people into breakout rooms. I am going to create around 10 breakout rooms. So we'll have about 5 people per group. When I do this, you'll get a little invitation asking you to accept or to assign yourself to a room. Please click OK. Once you do that, you will be divided into rooms. Please do unmute yourself and start having a conversation with people. Obviously, just do a quick introduction. Quick introduction, please. Where you're from and perhaps which part of the world or which industry you're working with. And then what I'd love for you to talk about for about 6 to 8 minutes, and I'll kind of manage, I'll keep jumping into the different rooms. What I'd love for you to talk about is, what is your organization doing to deal with this change, this pandemic that we're dealing with right now? So 6 to 8 minutes, I'll let you self-regulate. I'll keep jumping into the rooms to see you guys are having a conversation. I'd love for you guys to talk to a smaller group as to what your organizations are doing to deal with change and how you're managing change right now. Some of the proactives, are you letting change happen to you, or are you dealing with change? So here we go then. You'll get a little notification. Please do accept. Once you go into the rooms, please start having a conversation. And after a few minutes, I'll merge you guys back into the main room. Here we go then. When you get the notification, please do accept. Here we go.
Nice to meet you too. I think you are at work at the moment. Are you in the office?
Yes, I'm in the office at the moment.
Me
so
too.
I work partially from work from home as well as office. So
very well, guys.
Right.
I'll just wanted to come and say hi. I see you guys are already introducing yourself.
Hi. Yes.
Your conversation around what your organizations are doing right now to be able to manage the change. Over to you guys.
Work from home, we have different kind of apps and different kind of connect.
Very well. I see you guys are already having a conversation, so I'll let you guys be. Please carry on your conversations in your group. What is your organization doing to manage the change we're living in now? Let's go ahead.
Okay. So basically, we have got all our
two wings, and we are operating with just two buildings. And what we are seeing is most of the roles are getting ambidextrous.
I
So
got
lots
trying
of
to disturb you.
multitasking.
Your room does look a little less populated, so I've got some new people coming in. I'll jump them into your room. Please do carry on your conversation. My apologies to interrupt, and over to you guys. Go ahead.
Thanks, Omar. Thanks, Omar.
So yeah.
Hi guys. Tasavvur, you're the only one here. What are you doing here?
Well, a couple of guys came and then they went back. I don't know what happened to them.
No worries. I'll get somebody else to join your room right now.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, you can keep chatting to yourself. Give me a few minutes.
Yeah, no, otherwise I'm alone enjoying myself.
Let me figure this out.
From me, and also pass on that to the team. So there was a discussion earlier about culture, and I think this is a core element that we practice ourselves and also we preach clients on. So now's the time to test.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. I see a fantastic conversation happening. Didn't want to interrupt. Well, any group with Dr. Bashar and Salia and Zia will be, and Hassan will be a fantastic group. So I'll let you guys continue, please, about 5 to 6 minutes more, and then I'll break you into the main room. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. So generally, this is what I've been dealing with. So trying to remove the anxiety from.
Hi guys, Omar Hayat here. Sorry to interrupt. I see a few people on the call. I hope you're able to have a conversation with each other around what your organization is doing to deal with the change. Sultan Saab, Muhammad, Aisha, you yourself?
Yeah, I'm fine, but the other people have muted their voice, so we cannot talk. So we're just trying to.
That would be difficult.
That would be difficult. Typing is, I cannot type very fast, so I will take time even for typing and even giving the answer.
No worries, Arshad, Muhammad, Suman, if you guys are there, please do unmute yourself and.
Unmute myself. Then let's talk. I think I can give them a lot of insight about it.
Which room is this, sir? Let me see. This is room number 7. I'll get a couple of people to join you right now, sir.
Yeah, okay, that will be fine.
Let's see if we have them accept as well, because they have to accept, and then I will turn them over to you.
Hey Omar, how are you?
Hi guys, Omar here. I see a small room compared to other rooms, but well, Islam is here. We should be fine. Everything should be okay. I'll just be collapsing this room in about 2 or 3 minutes and bringing you guys back into the main room.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, so we basically so that's some of the stuff we did.
Okay. Mr. Khurram Khwaja is here, so Tasavvur, you should have somebody to speak to now.
Yeah, at least, exactly. I don't know what happened. 2 other guys came in, but for a moment.
Maybe they didn't like you.
Yeah, possible, exactly.
Just a couple of more minutes and I'll collapse you guys back in the main room.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, great, thanks. So, Mr. Tasir, what do you do?
Peace. Utilization.
All right, guys, just a heads up, I'll be collapsing the room in 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Thanks, Omar.
For expats in the UAE.
Hi guys, sorry to interrupt. I'll be collapsing the room in just under 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Guys, sorry to interrupt. I'll be collapsing the room in just under 2 minutes. I'll be collapsing the room.
Yes, Omar, we have already discussed and it's a good discussion going on.
Of course, Dr. Homa, you're on the call. Of course, it will be a good discussion. A few minutes, I'll drop you guys back into the main room. Up, guys, I'll be collapsing the rooms in just about 90 seconds.
Okay.
Yes, Omar Hayat.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. I'll be collapsing the room. 1 minute. 1 minute, I'll be collapsing the room.
Okay, no problem at all. Perfectly fine. So, Mr. Arslan, I don't know what you do.
All right, guys, I'll be collapsing the room in 30 seconds. I'll be taking you back to the main room.
Okay.
Thanks, Omar.
Thanks. See you later, guys.
All right, guys, I'll be collapsing the room in just about 20 seconds to bring you all back to the main room. All right, folks, we should start seeing people now back into the main room. You should be able to see our main screen, which is the conversation we've been having around organizational change. So we will continue then with our conversation. Everybody should now be in the main room. 30 seconds to make sure everybody's okay. Very well. There you go then. Let us continue our conversation around where we find ourselves today and some of the things that organizations should be doing to manage change. I've realized that some of the groups we had some of the issues in terms of number of people, but fantastic to see that you were able to have conversations in smaller groups. Remember these VILT, these virtual instructor-led training sessions. The objective and the idea of these is to have an interaction with you, to hear your thoughts, and for you to be able to learn from each other. This forum that we're running every Thursday from now until this challenge, not crisis, we will not say crisis, this challenge will go away. We'll keep doing this every Thursday so we get to learn and to share from industry and global best practices from all over the world as well. I do have Mr. Arshad Gadet as well with us. Arshad's a partner with some of the leading, one of the leading accounting firms from one of the global accounting firms. Arshad, just 60 seconds over to you. I'd love to hear from you in the world of kind of change and change management. What are you seeing? What are your clients doing? What are they cost cutting? Are they hiring? Are they retrenching? What's going on?
Thanks, Umar. I was talking in the group also just now. I think the conversations in last one week when we had our last call has changed really. The pandemic is so huge; it's overwhelming for everybody, because normally when change happens in pockets. For example, it would have happened to an organization or a particular sector, an industry or a country, but then it is so huge that people don't see the end of the tunnel. So there is a lot of desire and urgency of doing something right now. Otherwise, how we will save up for the future. So some people have taken a knee-jerk reaction and doing a lot of stuff which would not be healthy for business going forward. Like businesses which are in hospitality, they are actually have already decided to lay off people. I think that, and I've been sort of talking to them and say there must be other ways of utilizing your staff. You can't just think directly to the last option you should have. But some organization, on the other hand, they are being very creative. There's looking at the opportunities coming out of it, and I'm really surprised. The change in last 1 week, people, when they were in that zone of fear, they have now moved on and started thinking about that's not new normal now, we have to live with it, and they have moved into a different zone now.
Absolutely, Arshad. From our call last week and some of the conversations we're having today, it does seem like we have some people accepting this new normal and kind of figuring out, well, this might not be a few days, a few weeks, God forbid, a few months. We've got Salam Al-Kindi with us from Oman as well. Dr. Al-Kindi, love to hear from you, HR expert. Maybe 30 seconds, Salam, if you want to unmute yourself. HR, what are you seeing? What is happening in the world of HR? Laying off people, sending people on unpaid leave. What are you doing, Salam?
As I was mentioning in the private room, I think the airline is being hit the most, I guess, amongst all the other business with this. And it's really difficult as you are getting zero revenue at the moment. And while you are keeping all the expenses and the costs, at least the fixed costs, all in place. And the major cost is, of course, the employment cost. So yes, we don't like to terminate employment, and definitely we will need those individuals after we come back. but sometimes we are forced to do so. And as my colleague Arshad was saying, it would be probably the last option, and that's why we haven't gone to that extent so far. And we are now talking about, as you mentioned, unpaid leave, because people are not working at all. It's not their mistake, of course, but the company is not getting anything out of them. So
interesting. So my apologies to interrupt, Salam.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see then on our next call, and as we go forward in the weeks, how will we be, how will our conversation change? Will we go into a phase where we become more creative and innovative? Will we start reallocating some resources? Will it be a discussion, an open discussion with our staff to say, well, look, this is how the organization is doing. We need your participation to co-create the future. Just to go, and by the way, if anybody would like to make a comment, or if they'd like to say something in terms of what you're seeing in your organizations, please feel free to just kind of raise your hand, and then I'll let you know when you can come in. Let me continue with the conversation around the typical steps to change, the typical steps that right now an organization must be doing if they're going to handle this change initiative well. First of all, kind of what Salam and Arshad were referring to a little bit, creating that sense of urgency, right? Explaining the why. Very interesting, right? You have these organizations or staff and employees telling us, well, look, our company they've done so well for so many years, right? We've made so much money, so we should be fine, right? We should be able to pay salaries for the next 6 months. Well, why are they cost cutting now? I mentioned in our last call a typical overhead from staff, so salaries and typical benefit packages, making up 10 to 15% of a medium to large organization's total expenditure, total overhead. But yet, cost cutting and laying off people is the first thing organizations go towards, as opposed to reducing factories and reducing office space and that kind of stuff. So it'll be important in this time to create a sense of urgency, to tell people it's not going to be months that it's going to take for us to do this. It could very well be weeks, and we must explain the why we're doing this. Let me talk about the second part, which is some of the steps that you must be taking right now is creating a guiding coalition, right? So having some people join you, those ambassadors of change. If you've got people in your organization that are doing well in the change, their attitudes are positive, they're proactive, and they're kind of dealing with the change and moving on, it will be important to bring these people together and create a guiding coalition, right? Champions of change, ambassadors of change, to be able to recognize and reward people who are rolling with the punches and doing well in this time of change, not just surviving, but thriving in this time of change. Again, anybody, if you'd like to say something, we've got people from all over the world, from different industries. Please do kind of raise your hand, and I'll definitely, my pleasure to bring you in and share your thoughts as well. Let's talk a little bit about step number 3, how important step number 3 is. Developing a change vision. Discussing with people. Now, this is not just your change vision as a senior leader, as a manager, but kind of co-creating that vision. I gave the example of organizations in the past that have done very well with change, and those who haven't. We gave the examples of Kodak and BlackBerry and Nokia and Ericsson, and all these organizations that knew that change is coming. It's not like they didn't know, but their ability to react to the change. And we discussed last time how companies like Kodak, people always say, oh, it was the digital camera. Well, the technology for the digital camera was invented by their engineers. But they kept saying, we make film. We're going to keep making film. Is it possible that after this, maybe your core business needs to be looked at? Maybe we need to move away from our core businesses. Just some food for thought. What will we look like after this change is over? I gave you the example of Southwest Airlines last time, how they were on their knees in 2008 to the best airline in the US and then in the world in 2013 and 14. How did they do that? It was through co-creating a change vision. And everybody bought into the change vision. The janitor at NASA, remember that example, right? The person cleaning the floor at NASA saying, "What are you doing here?" "I'm sending a man to the moon," right? That's how much people bought into that change vision. Is your organization talking about what the vision will be, what success will look like after we get done with this? How about step number 4? How critical is step number 4? Communicating the change vision. I've got people, managers and leaders from all over the world. I'd love to hear from you in the chat box right now. Do you believe your organization, do you believe you yourself are doing a good job in communicating with your people right now? Honest truth, you don't have to mention your companies. I think I'll blackmail you with later, don't worry. Just love to hear from you. Are you doing a good job right now? Is your organization doing a good job communicating what things will look like after the change? Why is the change happening? Some people saying, well, 50-50, not so much. Other people saying, yeah, we're on it. Love to hear from you in the chat box. How are you guys dealing with change? Do your people know what will happen after the change? As well as you do, of course. Sharon saying, yeah, we're on it, but we could always do a little bit better. Imran saying we're kind of halfway a little bit. Afzal saying we're in the wait and see moment, kind of, not there yet. Day to day at the moment. Love to hear from you. Are you guys doing a good job right now in communicating that? Khurram Khwaja saying we're there yet, but communication can always be improved. Of course, ongoing situation, right? So this is not a destination, it's a journey. Change management is not a destination, it's a journey. It's our ability to kind of keep people engaged on that journey that'll define how well we come out of this. Thank you so much for your conversations and your comments in the chat box. Let's move on a little bit and talk a little bit about this step 5 now. We've got about 10-11 minutes on the call, and then I'll leave the last few minutes for questions and comments. Again, if you do like to say something, please raise your hand, and my pleasure to get you unmuted and bring you guys in. So let's talk a little bit about that change 5, step number 5, which is empowering broad-based action, which is empowering now others to be able to bring it, to enact that vision. So the vision no longer remains the CEO's vision. It no longer remains the senior management's vision, but it becomes our vision. This is where we talk about leadership at every level. Leadership at every level, right? So it's not just kind of, well, it's my boss's project, or this cost-cutting activity is something, it's not for me, it's for somebody else. It's everyone, who remains engaged with that. Now, typically, we look at these 6 stages, right? So typically, people will kind of talk about the 6 stages of change, and they'll leave it at that. David, of course, fantastic, entrepreneur and done fantastic things. David, love to hear from you. And thank you for sharing. You're saying we're remote working. We're trying it, right? We're all trying it, David, and we're all learning things about, the good and bad that comes with that. But I would like to share 2 more stages with you, and get your feedback on this, right? Which is this idea of step number 6, which is generating short-term wins, right? In our last call, which was on leadership, I spent a lot of time talking about walking around trying to catch people doing something right. Typical managers, right? Typical managers, present company excluded, of course. We make the mistake of almost walking around trying to find people doing something wrong. Many of us have been guilty, right? As managers, we need to fix things. because of our typical left brain, analytical, problem solving, KPI, objective oriented mindsets where we say, well, I got to fix things. And by the way, some managers, when they can't find things to fix, they break things so they can fix them, right? So hopefully we're not guilty of that. So look at the opposite, right? In this time, walking around trying to catch people doing something right, generating and celebrating those short-term wins. So that project that got delivered, the meeting that finally happened, somebody came up with a creative, innovative way to optimize resources and to allocate resources. I truly and genuinely believe that in this time, communication is a given, but one step above that now. Walking around trying to catch our people doing something right and celebrating and recognizing short-term wins. I didn't want to stop at these stages. I wanted to kind of mention two more that I thought would be relevant, which would be this idea of sustaining, right? So this idea of acceleration of that vision. Great leaders and mentors have this ability to drum up their organization's response, right? So when they want to get people fired up, they increase that sense of urgency. And when it's, they want to dial that down, they dial it down. If you allow me to say, great managers and leaders become like maestros, right? So they increase the pace when they need things to happen, and they kind of mellow it down as it needs to be. Are you a maestro when it comes to leadership and management? And finally, that kind of last stage, and I wanted to put it there because I think that's something we can all kind of learn from, is maybe this is just the beginning, right? Maybe this change we're going through right now, maybe this will be our new normal. God forbid, I hate to be negative, but maybe beyond this, there'll be other shocks and waves that'll hit us. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we're able to come out of this better equipped, more agile? Because, things are never as bad as they seem the first time around, like in life in general, right? Remember that first time you hear something, oh my life is over, right? That kind of thing. But then after a few days, after a few weeks, not so bad. You know that God forbid if there was a second shock and a third shock, our ability to deal with this will be more enhanced, right? We genuinely believe we're now much more resourceful. So now your ability to, I've had some conversations with people saying, well, I don't know how this virtual stuff works, and this technology and remote teams, I'd never do it. Well, you're doing it now, and we're listening and learning together. So be prepared for the next change. Be prepared for the next change. Nobody knows what it's going to look like, how it's going to be, but it's our ability to manage this change and the next one, and incorporate that into our day-to-day. That'll dictate how far we go. Final question for you in the chat box. And then I'll turn it over to any questions or comments you have, and then we'll wrap up our session. Final question for you in the chat box. Where are you guys today? Just take 30 seconds, kind of read this trajectory, what we've put up on the screen. Are you guys at stage number 1 in your organization where we're just trying to explain the why? Have you guys identified your champions of change? Are you at that stage right now? Are you at that stage where you are now telling people, look guys, it's gonna be a bumpy road, but once we come out of this, this is what it'll look like? Are you in communication stage of that, kind of telling people, communicating weekly and daily, having town halls and open houses and calls? Are you in stage number 5, where this has become a broad-based action, where you've got people with you? Are you on stage number 6, which is now you're recognizing and already starting to see some people live that change? Are you on step number 7 already, which is, Omar, not only have we not only do we know what we have to do, we're busy doing it. Love to hear from you. Look at this, some fantastic answers coming in. Stage number 4 and 5 and 6. Some people saying, you know, we're not only kind of dealing with the change, we're actively, you know, leveraging the change. Dipti, obviously, you know, HR leader from a global HR leader saying, you know, we're kind of generating short-term wins. We're recognizing where people are. Salia is on the call with us. She's done a ton of work on HR and mediation and looking at HR contracts. Salia, if you're there, I'd love to bring you in for 30 seconds. If you can join us, I guess this world of HR mediation and looking at contracts and people asking you what their contracts mean. Are you busy with that? Not sure if you're there, Salia. If you want to unmute yourself, my pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of calls at the moment from both employers and employees saying, I've gone on unpaid leave, what's my legal rights on this? And not just in the Middle East, actually, because this is really big now everywhere in the globe. I'm also getting calls from companies in the UK too saying, hey, it's unfair. I've been asked to work reduced hours and on reduced pay. What can I do? So yeah, a lot of employment legalities everywhere, obviously. But my main advice to everyone is to stay calm. And my advice to companies is, look, where you're offering reduced hours and reduced pay, make sure that you do give them some reassurance. So when you pick back up again, you can repay back that cut back in salaries that you've done. So that's one way of looking at things, to give that reassurance. If they know, they can pick that trajectory up and go back into the future again, and things will be okay again. So
Salia,
yeah,
thank you so much for those comments.
No worries.
Reform HR, what a fantastic job you guys have been doing, and it'll be our pleasure. I'm sure many of the people on this call would also benefit as things kind of go ahead in these next few days and weeks, and talking about what does contractual obligation look like? Are there ways to kind of manage this? We've got the last 4 or 5 minutes on the call. Love to hear if anybody, 30 to 60 seconds, I'll have to time you a little bit, my apologies. If you'd like to say, you know, where you are in terms of change management for yourself. Remember, there were 2 parts of our conversation today. Your own ability to manage change, because you cannot give to others what you do not have yourself. You can fake it till you make it, but sooner or later people find out. And then secondly, your organization and how your organization is dealing with change. Anybody like to share something? Love to have you guys last few minutes, 30 seconds. If you want to unmute yourself, or if you have any questions in the chat box, love to entertain those. 30 seconds. Floor open to anybody. If you'd like to unmute yourself and say a few words, you speak now or you hold your peace forever. Couple of comments coming in.
Omar, I would just add a couple of things. In these sort of difficult times, I've actually heard a lot of people are doing a lot of different things. And I think from an HR standpoint, that would be something really nice. I heard somebody actually doing on the call lunches with all the teams, just to say that we are all in it together, you know. This is such a sort of good thing, and sharing all the small positive news every now and then. So not focusing on what's gone wrong, but sharing all the information which was not being shared before. They're now being widely shared. So I think there are small pockets of things, you know, which will add up to something sizable for everybody to see.
Fantastic, especially when they send you the bill for the lunch. We'll be able to control that. Fantastic idea, of course. Lunches, giving people opportunity to celebrate, maybe the cake cutting, the birthday parties, right? All that kind of stuff happening remotely. What a world we live in. Anybody else? Final couple of minutes. If anybody would like to share their thoughts on what you yourself are doing, any global best practices, anything you're picking up and learning. Remember, this is a forum. This is not a typical webinar, not death by PowerPoint. The idea is not for me to talk and for you to listen. It's just we've got so many leaders, industry leaders from all over the world every week, every Thursday, we'll give you the opportunity to listen and to learn from each other. Anybody, virtual pizzas, of course. Yeah, why not? Why not, Salia? David, thank you so much for your comments as well. Thank you,
Omar. Just one more thing.
Go ahead, please.
I don't know. You may have already decided the next steps and how you would want to take this forward. But I think one of the suggestion is just to talk about specific solutions and success stories as to what people have done already. So that to just give you an ideas, hints and tips. Of course, there are multiple things which can happen to a different organization. So you can't have one size fit all answer. But I think listening to people, finding the solutions, specifically focus on success stories would be really grateful.
Fantastic. And isn't it great that, we've got these, sometimes talking about stress reduces stress, right? So sometimes, just being on a call and kind of sharing and listening to each other helps people get over this. Our next call or our next session next week will be on stress management and employee wellness, employee well-being, an important topic in these times. Love to hear from you guys. You'll get your invitations, in your emails and so on. During that time, please stay safe. Please stay positive. This too shall pass. Our attitudes will define us in this time. So stay positive, and not only yourself, share that positivity with others. Loved having a conversation with you guys. We'll see you next Thursday, 11 a.m. Dubai time. Until then, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.